Hello, welcome to Women's World Podcast. Before you start watching this very interesting episode, please don't forget to subscribe and like this episode so you can hear more of valuable information. So today I am together with my guest Amanda. Amanda, tell a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you for having me very much. About me, that's a very big question, right? But just to keep it short and brief, I guess, I am a mother of two beautiful girls. I'm a pet lover. I have a cat, actually two cats now. I have a dog. I have some chickens in the garden. And I dedicate my life to transforming women's lives with my evidence-based integrative transformation. So I work specifically with women who are stuck in people-pleasing and they tend to put themselves last and they want to make a lasting change in order to shift that and start to put themselves first without feeling guilty.
Yeah, that's a big common issue between women. I think we do that often without realizing it. It's unconscious, automatic response, right? And it could come from traumas, I guess, or what's your opinion about that?
Well, first of all, it is kind of socially accepted. We are socially molded to be like that also. We can learn it from our mothers, grandmothers, also from traumatic experiences. So I think a lot of things can actually play a big role in how, let's say, we become people pleasers, right? For me personally, I think I took it over from my let's say, female line, right? But also I was raised by a narcissist, so I think that contributed even more towards that, because in life and as we're growing up as children, we adapt, right, in order to survive. And survival equals being accepted and loved. You do whatever you need to do in order to, let's
be
say,
liked.
Be accepted, right? Belong, sort of to say, to your tribe, right? And your tribe is essentially your family, your caretakers.
Okay, makes sense. And what did inspire you to do this kind of job?
Well, I was searching for myself for a very, very long time. And I tried many different methods. And I found that I was getting stuck by utilizing different methods. So I tried therapy, I tried, positive affirmation, I could name many of them, right?
Healings.
But all kinds of healings, right? The thing was that I felt like I was putting a puzzle together, right? And there were like pieces missing, right? And at some point, I think my lowest point was when I had my first daughter and I was sitting in a sofa and I was holding her and I was thinking, I feel such a failure because I'm like, I have this new bundle of joy. I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to be excited about this new chapter of the life. But deep inside, I just felt completely defeated, without energy. And I felt like I just didn't belong. And that really
maybe like you
was
weren't
my biggest
the right example for your daughter because you weren't feeling 100% healed.
Well, at that time I would say certainly not, but also because of those feelings I was inspired to take action and to find solutions. And my solutions that I found that worked for me, and then eventually I also started to apply to my clients more and more, were to create a method that integrates essentially all the elements that are necessary for healing in order to get out of the cycle and actually start living also for yourself without having fear of being rejected by anybody, right? By being not loved. Basically feeling that you have to give but you're not receiving back. And the biggest step for me was I've done work on myself for more than 15 years. At that time when I was sitting in that sofa, right? Yes, I think I wasn't... By the way, it's important maybe to point out, I don't believe such thing as being healed, right? Because it's a journey. And that's a very important point. It's not like you're broken and need to be fixed, right?
No.
It's a journey of a life, right? And there are different chapters of it, right? And in that chapter, I just felt a bit hopeless because I was like, I've tried, I went to therapy so many years. I've tried all these, other different methods. And I was just not putting things together, right? And for me, the essential pieces that were missing was a combination on transforming your self-worth towards understanding who you are as a person, but also understanding that your self-worth is not a fixed aspect. Because a lot of the times we have an assumption, it's like saying, I have blue eyes and I will always have blue eyes, right? And that's, let's say, how we define also our self-worth. But in reality, it's a fluid aspect, right? The fact that you think I'm not worthy of something doesn't mean that you're actually not worthy of it, right? It's your opinion of that. And because of that opinion, you tend to then put yourself down and put yourself into situations where you are confirming that negative core belief. And as a result of that, then you end up basically stuck in that loop where you're unconsciously choosing situations and actions that are only making you feel worse.
Right. And how do you recognize that you're stuck in it?
How do you recognize if you're stuck? I think this is based on a symptom level, let's say, right? How do you feel? Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling fulfilled? Are you feeling relaxed? Versus, are you feeling stressed? Are you feeling constantly tensed up? Are you feeling like you're giving so much but things are still not working, right? These are just examples. But essentially, if you can think of it, you can look at it as balance, but you also can look at it as harmony, right? Do you have the harmony within your life that is making you take your life with easiness into, let's say, following the flow, which also a part of it where femininity comes in, right? Because we live in a masculine world, and sometimes it can be also very difficult to get into your feminine side where your intuition is switched on, where you trust, right, yourself.
Yeah.
And the problem is when you're doubting yourself, you cannot trust yourself.
Yeah, that's true. If you're doubting yourself, you cannot take decisions rationally.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And,
yeah.
and another thing that just to point out about the doubt, what I find also maybe an important aspect there is when you are doubting yourself, right, you're being triggered, I would so call it, by external sources, right? So by anybody who would say anything, right, that would even strengthen your doubt, it would escalate, right? And you would doubt yourself even more, right? So the point of actually looking at that doubt and eliminating that doubt, right, to find that inner strength to actually understand where it lays and what is it about is what creates that opportunity and allowance for you to grow as an individual, as a woman. And once you're growing and becoming stronger, then all these external stimuli that are coming in, then they become just as noise, background noise that you're not reacting to anymore. And then we're talking a bit more in the direction of resilience.
We're going deep. We're going really deep. Damn. Well, for me, like, basically it surrounds everything around this negative self-talk, right? It's kind of the same when you are saying those bad affirmations to yourself. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. People won't like me. You see it all the time in the women's world. They think even coming to dance class, they're like, oh, but I'm not good. Like, I'm not as good as you. But you're coming here to learn. Nobody is perfect. Even I come to other dance classes and I think, oh my God, I need to do so much work. So it's always a process. You will always be working on yourself. You will always have to evolve somewhere, but you still have to sit still and be happy with your value already, what you have to bring to the table, because you are unique. And that's what I think women forget often, that they are unique. Every man, woman has their own special character, their own special things and valuable things, and yeah, we should just embrace that, I think. But it's difficult for some people. It's really difficult to get out of the negative spiral, negative thinking. And I would say, isn't it like reprogramming yourself, if you have to change the mindset, what the tools would be? What would you advise to our listeners?
Well,
or what tools do you use in your practice?
First of all, I would say point one is willingness, openness to actually start to think differently, right? And starting to think differently evolves around being aware of what you're saying to yourself, right? Because something that doesn't exist, how can you change something if it doesn't exist, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a very important level of trying to understand what sits within your mind.
So basically recognize the issue.
Recognizing the issue, but I mean it also more at a deeper level. Like, let's say we're sitting here together, right? Mm-hmm. And perhaps, you have some kind of thoughts coming in like, I don't know, let's say you wanted to ask specific questions and maybe you were like, I forgot something, right? And in the back of your mind, sometimes you have this like little voice that starts to be like, don't mess it up, don't fuck it up, mm-hmm. Make sure you do it right. Mm-hmm. So these are the kind of voices mm-hmm. that I'm talking about, right? I call them even, let's say, your good side and the bad side, right? Like, in some concepts you also have the devil and the angel, right? But we all have that, and actually they have many archetypes of negative thinking, right? There are actually 10 subtypes, and within those 10 subtypes we can identify ourselves as either, for example, being very judgmental of ourselves and others, being very pleasing, for example, being very tense about situations. So it's not really important to understand what archetype you are, right? The most important aspect of it is to understand that you have it. We all have that, mm-hmm. right? Just because, as children we were told, I don't know, don't chew with your mouth open, don't do this, behave like rules. That, don't cry, be a big girl, mm-hmm. right? So all these underlying things, they sit within us and they become our inner voices. Mm-hmm. So not being afraid and actually sitting with your inner voice and feeling what it has to say, mind being, not assuming that it's let's say, that voice is correct and that you should listen to it, but just by becoming aware and understanding, like, okay,
where does it come from?
Yeah, where does it come from, right? Just to give you an example, my personal example, this is something that I'm really working on for many years, right? Mm-hmm. And it started with me being constantly anxious, right? And I would say, okay, I was, let's say, at level 100 at the anxiety level, and now let's say it would be level 20 or something like that. But mm-hmm. it's still a work in progress, right? As I was saying earlier, it's a progress that we should appreciate and not mm-hmm. the end point. So that being said, talking about anxiety, I recognize sometimes that I'm anxious, but sometimes I'm like, why am I anxious, right? I was driving the other day to an appointment and I was late mm-hmm. and everything was out of my hand because I left like half an hour in advance before my appointment and I was still running late. And I was feeling, firstly, what you feel is your body tensing up, like your shoulders usually are tensing up or your legs. You can feel also in your jaw. And I was like, okay, first you feel your bodily sensations, right? What am I feeling? I feel anxious because I'm being late and it is out of my hand, okay? I want to feel in control of the situation and I don't have that. What am I afraid? I am afraid to be judged because if I'm late and I come there late, I feel uncomfortable and my inner people pleaser, a recovering people pleaser is coming up because I want to be good to others. I don't want to be uncomfortable to others. Mm-hmm. So then I'm like, okay, I'm sitting with these feelings. I feel the uncomfort of that feeling, mm-hmm. of actually needing to go through that and then making a conscious choice. My old self would be like, oh, sorry, rushing, forgetting, maybe even needing to run back and even being more late because of all this, let's say, what happens in that moment is you you get into your fight or flight mode, right? Your amygdala gets activated, so you're not thinking clearly. Your prefrontal cortex is completely closed. You're not able to make a conscious decision in that moment. And as a result of that, the fight or flight is the tensed up, body function, thinking negatively about yourself, and reconfirming that, gets activated. And that's where you get to stop and say, I choose differently. And that's where the reframing of your mindset comes, because in neuroscience, the mindset, the brain is a flexible...
The neuroplasticity,
Yeah, but the brain is a flexible organ, right?
Yeah.
It can create new neural links, right?
Yeah,
so by repeating your action constantly, what happens is that you're just reinforcing these neural pathways.
Yeah.
But by pausing and choosing differently, and by recognizing what you need to choose, is essentially creating that new pathway. And at first, it's just a little road, perhaps through the grass, that is just like a path. And then over time, it starts to become a highway.
Yeah, but definitely you can break the negative spiral.
Yeah, this is essentially what I teach and what I work on with my clients, is teaching to reframe that, but also, not like here's the tool and do it, right? But actually think of it as an operating system that you install, right? In order to, let's say, upgrade yourself, but upgrade in the way that it helps you, right? It doesn't work countering your essence. I think that's where a lot of us, we feel lost, because we're not in touch with who we really are.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I think, as I mentioned in a lot of my podcast, actually, that also comes down often to wanting to be in control, but in a way that it's unhealthy and toxic for yourself, because you are trying to be perfect for others, as you say, perfect for your image, about your image, your reputation, what people think, how your parents will react, how your partner will react. It's a big journey, like you say, but it is really worth it to recognize it, get out of it, and start living for yourself. Because at the end, when we're old, the only thing we would regret is not living the life we want.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think so. And so the tools actually you use in practice are more mental exercises, as I remember, because you came to my workshop. Yes, thank you. And then if a person is recognizing it already, that's the first step. And then they have to try to let go of wanting to be good for others and try to be good for yourself, and just try to relax at that moment, right?
Well, it's a combination of different work that I do, right? So firstly, as I was talking about, it's awareness, right? So creating that awareness. And one of the practices that you can do with creating awareness is, for example, meditation, right? But I find that it's more challenging to apply it, because in meditation, first you need to be consistent, right? But you also need to have a lot of time on your hands in order to really apply it, right? You need to meditate, let's say, 1 hour a day or something like that. In my approach, I tone that down to the level of minutes a day, right? And creating that resilience really in a short period of time, right? In combination of then reframing your mindset, which is the second step. So in the second step, then we look at, okay, what limiting core beliefs would you have, right? What do you feel at the core level, and what do you feel at the surface level, right? And how are they connected? So we can actually start to trim them down to the core and start to transform them, right? Because a lot of the times when we think negatively about ourselves, it's very black and white, right? It's either good or bad, right? So I'm teaching them to gradually learn to see all the colors, right? And actually put yourself in the perspective of those colors, right? And sometimes it can be very good, sometimes it can be somewhere in the middle, right? And sometimes it can be, let's say, bad, right? But bad, also the perception of bad and understanding of what bad is also very important, right? Because you can think of, oh, I'm bad, I'm a failure, but oh, I did something bad, it's a chance for me to grow. It's a chance for me to learn something, right?
Yeah,
and that's the
that would be
third
better.
part, which is essentially shifting what you focus on, right? So instead of focusing on negative, focusing on the positive, right? Because that's also very powerful, and that's where, things that what you do also can come in at the level of affirmations, and other work, right? And then the last step essentially is combining that together and moving on to creating action, right? When I say action, right, looking at it as an experiment, right? Let's say, let's say you're cooking in the kitchen, right? How do you know if you, let's say, every time you would put like a spoon of salt, right, and it's like too salty, if you wouldn't put half a spoon, you wouldn't know if it would be fixed or not, right? This is like a silly example, but the point being is that essentially you start to build that internal trust to naturally start to make different choices, right? To experiment with your choices, but actually to feel good about experimenting your choices, because a lot of the times, and what I found also with many methods is that, okay, they give you, let's say, solutions, right? But deep inside you still have this fear and worry and guilt that is like dragging you down, right? While you're still, let's say, trying to apply all these methods, right? So for me, it's what I found with, let's say, research also, specifically in neuroscience and cognitive psychology, is by addressing that first, right? You're moving slowly into that upper level where you actually feel more sure of yourself. And as a result of that, when you're making that different choice, you start to feel gradually less and less guilt. And all these negative feelings that are actually dragging you to choose, the old way.
Okay, so we have some advice, I think, no?
I hope so. Of course, this is a concept, right? How you can maybe make it a bit of more practical thing, right? Let's say, think of it as a maybe habit building, right? A habit formation, right? Let's say we know that we need to brush our teeth in the morning and in the evening, right? As a minimum, right? To have healthy, nice teeth. But it's the same with everything else, right? It's the same with your own, let's say, mindset and resilience, right? If you're constantly thinking about yourself negatively, it will be very hard to step out of that, right? So start with making a list. What do you like about yourself? What do you love about yourself? What are you good at, right?
Also affirmations before sleep and in the morning.
I'm personally not like a big believer of affirmations. I have nothing against affirmations, and I think, by the way, they do work, right? I believe in such thing as creating a different reality to yourself because you believe in it, right? However, what I found for myself, and also because before that I was also coaching, before, let's say, I worked out my method and I, let's say, put this parts of the puzzle more together, I found that even if you're affirming, if deep inside in your core you still feel like a failure, right, and you still feel negative about yourself, the affirmations don't work on the surface level.
Yeah.
So it's important that you don't just say that affirmation, but then deep in the core, you don't believe it, right? And in order to believe it, sometimes for some people, and for me, for example, it also required to put in a lot of work at the core level in order to actually start to believe that affirmation, that I do deserve.
That's why exercises like writing compliments or good things about yourself are more effective, because you actually have to find those things and to believe in them.
Yeah, and also the interesting thing about writing, it activates your brain in another way, right? Than, for example, for just typing or looking things up or just thinking about it, right? It doesn't get instilled. Writing is very important indeed. So any type of journaling, any type of reflection within yourself, right? And what do you mean to yourself is always very powerful.
Yeah, that's true. And I think also it comes a lot down to self-worth, and things like actually even complimenting others can make you feel better about yourself. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's true, because you are automatically choosing a positive response, right? So you are also priming yourself to look differently, right? I mean, you could look at it at both ways, right? You could say, oh, she's so pretty, but I'm not, right? As an example, right? You can also have that approach, right? But you could also say, oh, let's say she's so pretty, and so is everybody else, right?
So am I.
And so am I, right? But it also starts with, let's say, I mean, you can go outwards if you're not comfortable to say that yet, because for some people it's very difficult to admit that. Sometimes I had a client actually who really was like, each time when I was, let's say, directing her towards what she thinks about herself, she was like, oh, I find it dreadful. I cannot do that. But over time, she started to actually make a list, because at the beginning it was just, for her, it was the worst thing that she could do,
Too
to start to make a list of herself about her good qualities, because from the very early on the childhood she was primed to never, let's say, be even proud of herself at any level, right? Because that's, and so we did the work on the level of eliminating the perception of that you may not be happy about or proud about yourself at any level, in any way, right? And so as a result, because she was constantly judging herself, she ended up being in a burnout, right? But by recognizing it, by being able to go into that sub-level where she was like, oh, actually I can be proud of myself and I have all these great qualities, right? Then you stop striving towards that perfection, right? Because perfection is very a big, also I think,
yeah, that can be a destroyer of confidence, perfectionism. Yeah, I think we have it a little bit in some way, in some one way or another. Someone can be perfectionist at their job, somebody can be perfectionist about the way they look, somebody about the way a family looks for them, the way a definition of something is for them, how they see the world and stuff. Some people don't give the space for miracles or different things to come in their lives. I noticed that as well with some women. They think like life is a puzzle, and when I'm married I'll be happy, like when I'm looking like this I'll be happy, and then they don't realize that TikTok, the time is actually going and you're just getting older, and you should just be happy the way you are, and you should be, of course you can work on yourself, but you should be happy already with who you are, and just try to embrace it instead of trying to make everything perfect.
That's a good point, actually, because this is something that I also hear about perfectionism. Like, well, if I'm not perfect, then things are not gonna get done. Yeah. Then I'm gonna be lazy. Then
or
I'm not gonna perform.
Yeah, when I'm feeling better, looking for the right moment, or saying I will be happy when I have, I don't know, Botox, when my hair is all long. Yeah, I mean, it's a small example.
Let's face it, when don't we do that, right? I think we're all guilty of doing that at some rates.
At some level, yes, but I'm learning to let go of things. Yeah, like now I'm also, my hair, okay, I have Botox, but I have natural hair, and this is something, it was a big no for me all my life. I was like, I need to color my hair. That was like a rule for me. I always went to a hairdresser every 4 weeks, every 6 weeks, I was there. And something just changed. I was like, what if I just let my hair grow and see the natural color? What if? Just try it. And actually, no regrets. It's cheaper. It's really cheaper, saves me some money.
That's very true.
Yeah, and I'm like, just try to take another path, try to take something else, try to take other classes, other job.
Sure, totally. The only thing that I think that is very important to maybe hear to our listeners is that if you feel that trying keeps you into paralysis at any level, right? You freeze, right? That's when it is important that you seek for somebody who can help you to break through that. Because in these moments, sometimes recognizing and just, brushing aside because it's too difficult to deal with that can actually signify that you need to address it. I mean, usually you feel it, right? It's a feeling that you have, right? But because it's so hard to do that, it's not that, you know, it's bad or you're a failure. It's, I need somebody to help me and to guide me out of that. And it can be anybody who you think that can help you, right? It can be a psychologist. In some cases, that's also very important. It can be a coach. But I think the most important part is that you need to choose a specialist that actually can understand what your need is, right? And can help you move out of that frozen
state.
Yeah. Thanks for filling in.
No problem. So yeah, guys, seek help if you feel like you have no choice and that you're paralyzed, from your own perfectionism or feeling unworthy, actually. Yeah. But it could be, indeed, it could be anything. It could be a workshop, it could be a coach, it could be some mentor, but don't get stuck. And all right, so let's see, what could we still cover, actually. And how can someone stay motivated if they feel like it's taking way too long? They still feel bad about it, and they still feel like they can't get through it. And you know, there are people that are really stuck with it because, like you say, if the longer you are bad to yourself and talking bad about yourself, the longer the healing process will take. So what would you advise to the people who have no patience and they're like, yeah, this is just driving me crazy and I can't keep up with it?
Well, the simple way to be is, of course, to seek for any help that you can find, that resonates with you, right? I think also reading about it, you know, I mean, you have many great self-help books that can address that issue on the understanding level, right? How to break through that.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
Just understanding,
maybe as well, podcasts.
Yeah, totally.
Shows or yeah, that's true.
I think at that point, like if you feel like so stuck, right? It's important to ask yourself, right? Is it more painful to do the work or to stay there?
Yeah, I like that one. Exactly. What would be the bigger regret, actually? Staying in that situation, not trying, or just taking the risk and trying to change it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes
because it's gonna get uncomfortable, right?
Of course, definitely.
That's also some sort of comfort zone. Sorry to interrupt, but that's being negative about yourself and stuff. That is a comfort zone. You're like used to it. You wake up, you're like, oh, another day. I'm not gonna be good at it, or I hate my job, I hate my life. So it's like it's a comfort zone in a way, even though it's uncomfortable. You know that it sucks, but you're there because you're used to it. And changing, it will take risk. It will be a risk. It will take energy. It will take time, and you will need to try new things.
Well, you can think of it as having, let's say, a big chest of drawers, right? But imagine you're opening each drawer and it's just like filled to the brim, right? You cannot put anything in, right? So firstly, you need to clear that in order to be able to put something new in, right? So I hate my job, I hate my life, I hate everything, right? Or I don't feel fulfilled, or I feel exhausted, I feel, I don't know. I mean, there are many, let's say, themes to that topic that can play a role, right? But these are essentially, if you're keeping your drawer closed, right, it doesn't mean that it's empty. It will not get empty, right? It will only get fuller because...
Indeed.
And that's what happens with our bodies, right? It manifests through our bodies, through the physical pain. The emotional pain gets into the physical aspect, right? That's where the somatics come in, where, let's say, I mean, one of the most common themes that I see also in women is, let's say, anger and frustration. We are just having a very difficult time to express that because we were never, I mean, like, look at men, right? They're like, they just get angry, they blurt it out, and nobody says anything about it, right? But let a woman be angry, right? Whoa, indeed, like, whoa, you're a bit exaggerating. This is just, but I mean, come on, it's insane, right? If you think about it.
Yeah, that's
right?
True.
Yeah, so but this happens essentially also by closing that into that drawer, right? And not letting it out, right?
That's true.
And then when you need to release the years of anger that you have built in for everything, even the smallest things, it's so liberating to be able to just
Definitely.
scream it out and never look back.
Yeah, right. And what would be the last advice you could say for someone who is doubting that maybe she's having these issues, but she's, like you say, closed closet and she doesn't really feel comfortable talking about it yet?
Well, go for a walk and be in nature and try to feel and see what comes.
Be with yourself.
Even if it takes you an hour to drive to the forest where like you're totally alone and you can scream a little, right? And you know, I mean, for some it's also, I find that some are not comfortable doing that, right? But for me it sounds very liberating, and some of my clients, they also love doing that. So when I mean, we get to the point where, you know, this is part of the work that they need to do. Some of them feel more comfortable to do that at home when there's nobody at home, and they just do some exercises, you know,
like meditating. And
I'm talking about screaming, not meditating.
About screaming, yeah.
But just, you know, punch into the pillow. If you need to scream, you know, even if it takes you to scream into the pillow, but allow yourself to feel, because that's part of you and who you are, essentially. And by allowing yourself to feel, you will awaken what has been sleeping within you.
Right. Thank you. Is there anything else you would like to add for today's podcast?
I cannot think of anything unless you have specific questions.
I had a lot of questions, but I think we're like, we did our own thing.
We can do take two always. And if people have questions, I'm happy to answer them if they want to reach out.
Exactly. Just maybe tell us how we can find you.
Yeah, so you can visit my website, which is a very complicated name, by the way. So it's Amanda Tambuyer, which is TAMBUYSER.com. But I hope you will get it also into the captions.
Yeah,
people didn't catch that. So I have some free resources there also available if you want to discover and understand more about it. And I think also just commenting under the video, right, under our podcast, your podcast, and just asking some questions, or, you know, maybe we can create, let's say, a second one with the questions that people have to address them.
Of course. It was nice having you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And a small reminder, of course, start your year good in 2025, and you can also book already the tickets to the next Women's World podcast, the Women's World Workshop, and that's going to be the 2nd of February. Date is 2/02/2025. Very nice date, very nice activities, very small, and it's gonna be focused on awakening this time, on spiritual awakening. Gonna do the usual things like dancing, meditating, spiritual healing, ice bath, of course, yoga. And if you want more information, definitely go to Women's World Workshop.eu, which I will also drop in the comments. Thank you. Don't forget to like this video and share, definitely, for us to show us love. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Much love.